What is up, my strong friends? Nah.
Hello, my strong friends, and
What's up, guys? Justin Morgan here, and today we're going to talk about yearly training. How, as an athlete, your training should change throughout the year from season to season, and some different ways that you can do that. We're going to talk about who this information applies to and at what stages it applies. We're going to talk about why you would do it, what would be the purpose in changing your training from season to season, and then we're going to talk about how to actually implement that out. So first, when we talk about who does this apply to, well, it's going to apply a little bit differently depending on what sports you compete in. So for the most part, I'm going to be speaking as a strength athlete, so powerlifting, strongman, Olympic weightlifting, those would all be in very somewhat similar categories. They have varying degrees of how much skill is required versus how much direct static strength is used in the sports, but and then bodybuilding is going to be a little bit more removed, but most certainly more similar than something like football or basketball, where the actual off seasons and on seasons are very different. So what we would basically look at, though, is also where the lifter is in their career. If you are a newer lifter, you're just starting out, you really want to compete in a sport, or you want to do something, you're one of the people that's gotten really involved in powerlifting, or maybe you just are going to the gym and want to build some muscle, you're going to be in a very different need than, or you're going to have very different needs than someone that has been training for 3, 4, 5 or more years. So you really don't need any kind of yearly training plan. You're probably going to spend almost an entire year trying to make just weekly progress, getting stronger from one week to the next. Maybe eventually it'll slow down and you'll need to start looking at more from 1 month to the next, but for that pretty much that first year of training, you're really not going to need to do much with any kind of phasic structure throughout the year. Now at some point, though, you kind of move on as a lifter. So some really good parameters that I'll discuss, and there's several different ones. So if the first one doesn't apply to you, then just kind of listen. I'll give some more simple approaches. But if you're a power lifter, then there's the Wilks score. And if you're familiar with Boris Shako, which if you're a competitive powerlifter, he would definitely be somebody that would be good to familiarize yourself with. He's a Russian powerlifting coach, and he's done a lot of amazing things over the years with training lifters and contributing to the sport of powerlifting. And he uses something called the Russian, actually I don't remember what it's called. It's like a categorized system for putting lifters into different categories. So the one that I'm most familiar with is the CMS, the Candidate for Master of Sport, and that would be based off of your Wilks score. So WILKS. You can find websites. If you just look up Wilks score, it'll take you to a website, and you'll need to know your total. So you'll need to know your squat, bench press, and deadlift combined, and then in either pounds or kilos. Most sites are either or. And then you need to know your body weight, and you need to know your sex. So that's one really good thing about the Wilks score, is that sex, like male or female, is something that is already accounted for. So if you want to compare your lifts to a female person and you're a male, maybe your boyfriend, girlfriend, you want to see who's actually stronger based on your body weight and whether you're a man or a woman, then the Wilks score is a really good way to do that. For weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, the Sinclair total is what is generally used, and that is not something that that does not distinguish between genders. So men and women, you can't really compare them in any way. It doesn't distinguish between the two. So those are just a couple of different ways. Strongman is a little bit more difficult to categorize in that way. And then bodybuilding, of course, is impossible to do that with. So, things that you would use for other types of sports like bodybuilding, strongman, or if you're just a recreational lifter trying to look good, you would kind of consider whether you're making weekly, monthly, or whether it takes more extended times for you to see progress on increasing your strength for a given number of reps. So if you're a bodybuilder or you're just a general kind of strength and conditioning person, then you probably don't need to do 1 rep maxes. That's not going to be very beneficial for you. But you might try doing a 5 rep max. So maybe you'll take whatever you were able to do previously. So maybe you're getting fairly strong. You're a 200 kilo lifter. Not 200 kilos. You would weigh 440 pounds. Maybe you can squat 200 kilos, 440 pounds, and you spend an entire training cycle as a bodybuilder or a general strength and conditioning person, and you want to see how well you've done. So maybe you'll take 90% of that. So it's like 183 kilos, I think, 400 pounds. And you'll do that for as many reps as possible, and maybe you'll get 5, 6 reps, or maybe more, and that will be a good estimate for whether you've increased your strength or not. That's one way to go about it. So now, then that also kind of begs the question. So where you're at as a lifter, how will that apply to which one of these you use? How will it apply to whether your phasic structure should be different? So if you are kind of pushing that envelope and you are in that category where you are able to make, where you're not able to make weekly or monthly gains anymore, you're not able to progress, well, then your training should really start to become more structured throughout the year. You should look at different phases, different parts of the year where you'll be making progress in different ways. So then I want to move on to the question of why. Why would you change your training throughout the year? And the reason is that if you're using different variations for the lifts, which is what I'm going to talk about and how to carry it out, then you will basically find that if you move away from a lift, using the squat as an example, so you start doing pause squats as your main squatting movement, well, when you come back to squatting or just doing regular squats, then it will be a novel stimulus. It won't be, and by novel, your body won't be accustomed to it, so it'll be a way that you're able to progress better than if you had been squatting the entire time. Now you're doing pause squats and you're still increasing your ability to squat, the muscles that are used in your squat, so it should still increase, but the pause squat, it's not going to carry over as well to the squat as your just regular squat will. So maybe you increase your pause squat from say 300, I'm going to use pounds, so you increase that from 300 pounds to 335 pounds over the course of 12 weeks. Well, if you're a 300 pound squatter and your regular squat was at 330 pounds or 335 pounds before, and now you can pause squat that, then likely it will have gone up, but it may not have gone up 35 pounds like your pause squat did. Maybe it'll have only gone up 20 pounds. So now maybe your regular squat is as a 355 pound squatter, and but then when you go back to training the squat as a regular part of your training, that will be a novel stimulus, and you'll be able to see, likely for the most part, better progress, or that's the idea anyways. You'll be able to see better progress because it's a novel stimulus. Now the last question is, how would you implement that out? Well, I did just give you one example, and we'll stick with that example for this last part, but the pause squat is something that can really be integrated into your training as a lifter, and make that your main movement. And maybe you squat 3 times a week. You use maybe a daily undulating periodization scheme. Reps are definitely a way that your training would change throughout the year. Further away from the competition, maybe you would do higher reps. Maybe you would do sets of 10 towards the beginning of the week, maybe 4 to 6 in the middle of the week, and then maybe you would do more like sets of 6 to 8 towards the end of the week, and that would be on the higher end of the rep range. You would be pushing a lot more volume at that point. Well, as you get closer to competitions, and if you're still using a daily undulating periodization scheme, well then maybe now you're doing sets of 5 to 7 towards the beginning of the week. Maybe you do sets of 2 to 4 in the middle of the week, and you do sets of 5 to 6 or something like that towards the end of the week. So that would be a daily undulating periodization scheme, where furthest from the meet or furthest from your competitions or where you want to be doing this, you are doing something that's higher in reps, whereas when you get closer, you're much closer to the rep ranges that are actually used in the competition. And then the other way would definitely be the variations of the lifts that you are using. You could use the pause squat instead of a regular squat if you're a strongman competitor and the overhead press is your primary thing. You could use lift as a press, then you could use things like strict pressing, and dips are always a good one for anybody to put in, but overhead pressing is the strict press, and then maybe you use a push press style for log pressing and things like that. Strict press and push press would be also great carryover to the split jerk or the push jerk if you use a jerk as your primary overhead press. And then the last thing, I guess, that I'll leave you off with, deadlifts are also one that applies to just about all of those sports. But doing deficit work or standing on something so that you're not able to use as much weight and there's a longer range of motion is also a beneficial way for you to integrate more other variations. So when you're furthest from a competition, using all those different types of variations is a great idea. It's a great way for you to put that in your training so that you're able to have novel stimuluses again when you get back into training for the competition. Now, they can't be so far removed from the actual competition movements that you use that you're failing to actually train the lift. Like, you couldn't just completely quit any type of squatting and only do leg press and other leg hypertrophy movements. That probably wouldn't be a good idea, and it really would probably stall your progress in squatting. So that's probably something you should keep in mind too, and would make sense and be a good idea. So I'm sure there's things I'm leaving out because I didn't take notes on this stuff beforehand, but that's it for today. It's a long video. You guys take it easy, and I'll talk to you in the next one.